Hello, everyone, and welcome to the launch of Punjabi Chamber of Commerce, San Francisco chapter. I'm Mudita Arora, healthcare expert in nutrition and food service systems and a member of PCC San Francisco Leadership Committee. It is my honor to kick off our chapter launch today. And thank you for taking out time from your busy schedules and participate in our ever-growing community. So to those who are new to our nonprofit group, Punjabi Chamber of Commerce aims to invite and unite Indian Punjabis globally and at a local level through commerce and cooperation. We are the world's first organization of its own kind dedicated to serving the needs of Indian Punjabis who are professionals and who are also could be also business owners. Now, the co-chairs of our chapter are, I'll be happy to introduce our leadership team, starting with the co-chairs. We have Kulwant Sandhu. Kulwant is based out of San Jose, California, and is currently serving as an industry leader as Vice President of Integrated Supply Chain at Outset Medical Incorporated. Our another co-chair, Sandeep Dhal, is based out of Pleasanton, California. He's an investor, author, entrepreneur, business and tech guru, and leading onto our chapter's leadership committee, which comprises of Neeraj Juneja. Neeraj has done a phenomenal job in keeping us on track for this launch. So thank you, Neeraj. Dilpreet Work, Gunita, myself, Mudita, Kirpa Grewal, Mahib Bhala, Kanika Walia, Karan Sandhu, Sahaj Singh Khalra, and Sukhmain Nijjar. It is also my honor to give the floor to Mr. Gurpreet, aka Gary Pasricha, highly seasoned attorney. By profession, Gary is a founder and trustee of our Punjabi Chamber of Commerce. Gary is based out of New Jersey, and it is my honor to hand over the floor to Gary.
Thank you, Madita, and thank you everyone for joining today. Sat Sri Akal, Namaste, and all the other wonderful greetings that our humanity has created for us. This journey started in 2017, and it was really focused on how we can help our community grow and do it in a meaningful way without having religion or politics as the basis for our group. And there were a lot of different groups that we're involved with, as you know, through our religious affiliations and professional affiliations. But our group here was really based that our Indian Punjabi community, if we don't discuss religion and we don't discuss politics, we're good, no problems. But once we start getting into these other things, then we quickly realize that we're out of our element and then we break apart. So we went to the Punjabi community here and we said, look, we want to start something different. And we raised money. We're a nonprofit. We raised money and we said, we wish to have a group where all Punjabis can feel welcome, men, women. We don't care about your background. We have plenty of non-Punjabis in the group. It's open to all. And we said, how do we get everyone to come together? And the way we did it is we raised capital locally with our trustees. And we said, we embarked on this mission and we have, our major thing is we have free membership, right? So if you could do the next slide, Neeraj ji. Right. So, you know, when we started and we had to develop our mission, how we do things, and what are the community's needs. And so what we did is we said, okay, let's try to unite not just the businesses, but the professionals in our groups as well. That separates us from other chambers, typically. And so, as you know, many of our kids and many of you who are joining today are You may not have your own business, or you have your business within another business. What I mean by that is if you are a banker working at a bank, a huge component of your compensation is based on a bonus and performance. And so we want to help you realize your goals. And so we said, okay, we're going to create this community of businesses and professionals. And when we work together, we can develop benefits in our network for all of the membership. Next slide, please. So I'm going to pepper a little bit of Punjabi here and there if you don't mind. But you know, people come to us and say, "Yaar, tu kyun karda pe hain? Tusi kyun panga le rahe hain?" And sanu chahida ki haiga, right? Why are you doing this? You know, why do you want to do it now? And you know, what's going on? And I'll just tell you a personal story. When I started my practice of law 26 years ago, I didn't know anyone. And we had to build everything from scratch, did not really have the support of the community. And a lot of us who come from other countries may not have that network right away. And so when I embarked, you know, on traveling and looking and talking to people before we even did this, we asked people, so, you know, what's missing? And everyone said only one thing over and over again. And this I have to say in Punjabi. Punjabi da hor ਕਿਸੇ ਨੂੰ ਕਦੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਵਧਣ ਦੇਣਗੇ। ਜਦ ਹੀ ਕੋਈ ਅੱਗੇ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਅਸੀਂ ਉਹਦੀ ਲੱਤ ਫੜ ਲੈਂਦੇ ਆ, right? And translated, it means Punjabis do not let others rise. And we're like crabs in a bucket, as they say, right? And I refused to believe that. And I said, no, it's the opposite. When you go, ਤੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਦੀ ਪੰਜਾਬੀਆਂ ਦੇ ਘਰ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਆ, ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਪੂਰੀ ਸੇਵਾ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ. And so when you go to anyone who's Punjabi, you know you're well taken care of. And there's never a shortage of food, love, and a jovial atmosphere, as we all know. Punjabis know how to have fun, right? So why don't we use the positive side of our culture to benefit our businesses, our children, and our future together? We'll always be helping other communities. That's in our DNA. But why can't we utilize our strengths to also help ourselves? So this is the background of why we're doing this. We were fragmented. You know, we all know this. There's a lot of trauma that our communities have gone through. And so how do we, you know, move on, reconcile? And this is a, you know, an initiative towards that. Okay. And next slide. So, you know, we've been blessed with a lot of different developers who've been trying to help us. And so we said, okay, how do we create this community of giving or love, as we say? And how do we make it such that it doesn't really favor one person over the other? Because as you know, let's face it, we've been in other groups which tend to favor a few people. And that was something we were trying to really fight against. And so then we created a free network so that it's not based on monetary giving only. And I still remember when I was in college, I went to the Indian club meeting, and there were like these seniors and I was a freshman. And I hated it because no one of them would say hello to me. And I'm sure a lot of you, when you guys go into some of these groups, unless you know who's in charge, some people don't even say hello. And that's something that we did not want. And so our stuff is to create a free network where we have, of course, a searchable directory, classifies, in-app messaging, other types of programs such as our mentor program, our classified sections for that feature jobs. And now we're starting our international investor group. We're going to have like a Shark Tank. We're even in talks with certain TV stations to air those pitch sessions on their networks. So when we get this going, and we're just getting started, we're not here to BS anyone, to be honest. We are launching we've just started launching worldwide. And our focus is to get people into the group and then develop some wonderful things together. And without you guys, without the members and our over 200 leaders that we have right now worldwide, we're nothing, right? So, we always say this is like Punjabi Uber, where we're all driving ourselves, right? And we're all trying to help each other, right? Next, please. All right, so look, you're gonna see some photos and you can start going through Nirji. These photos you're gonna see are some our webinar, not webinars, these are actual live events. Believe it or not, they existed. And this is our event in the city featuring entrepreneurs, right? Our New York City chapter. And you're gonna see, if you just keep going down, you'll see others, right? This is our New Jersey events. This is our gala with Anupam Kher, right? We sold out and it was a wonderful event. And this was our women entrepreneur section that we had, right? So we got a great response from the community. This is our event with Thai, New Jersey, and this is some of our members at a networking event. So this is our holiday party, of course. That's me with the Santa hat. So when we started going to places and checking it out, we of course started in New York and New Jersey. And truth be told, San Francisco was really the chapter that I wanted to develop very quickly because two reasons. One is when my father first landed from India, he landed in San Francisco in 1970. And it's a little funny story. He had no place to sleep on his first night. So he started asking a cabbie, "Main kithe so sakda aaj raati, mainu koi hostel dasso." And then it took him to Chinatown. That's the only place they knew. So in his first night, he slept in Chinatown, and he was the only non-Asian person, Chinese person there. But he always remembered how welcome everyone was, and he always loved the area. But anyway, so what we started doing is reaching out worldwide, and we look at different areas where there are Punjabi enclaves, and we find leaders. And in our Punjabi vernacular, sevadars, we call them, because that's exactly what we are. We're here to help the community. We don't do this for ourselves. We have so many successful people, professionals worldwide, and they're doing this for you, for the community, not for themselves. And everyone's already accomplished professionally or in their individual careers. They're looking to give back. So what we do is we go and we take wonderful people, men, women, different occupations, we put them together. And usually we have 2 to 3 co-chairs that help guide the group. And we have a strict diversity mandate in the sense that we like to have a very good mix of different people in the group, because that's what makes it all fun. And that's how, we can all give back in very different ways, in our unique ways. And so all the local communities, they come together. And Neeraj, if you go to the next one. Yeah, I mean, this is our Delhi group rooftop. It was a nice event. Once again, pre-COVID, I'm just closing my eyes and imagining how wonderful things were. This is Ludhiana chapters, our initial thing. Chandigarh. I took a trip to India, but then we of course do live webinars now, and you can just go slide through those, Neeraj. And fast forward, we started with 2 chapters, New York and New Jersey, and now we're almost up to 15 chapters. We also got in North America, we have, of course, San Francisco, Vancouver, Toronto, New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C. We have London. In India, we got Delhi, Mumbai, Ludhiana, Chandigarh, Jalandhar, Amritsar. And our 2 new chapters coming up, which we're very excited about, are Dubai and Sydney, Australia. So we hold events for outreach, and most of the events are curated by our membership and by our leadership teams. And so we give opportunities to everyone in the group to author, to take charge. And it's not just about, hey, this is one group doing things and we just have to listen. No, we want to listen to you. So it's very, very different. So we empower our memberships and our leaders. And we just started a monthly newsletter as well. And that too, people are encouraged to submit articles, and which would basically be given to all the membership. So these are just upcoming webinars. Check us out. It's on our website, punjabichamber.com, right? Not too complicated, right? Just go on our site. You'll see events, right? Each group has done this on their own, right? This is New York, Philadelphia, previously was London, right? And Vancouver, right? So it's been fun, and we're just getting started. So, once again, we need you to think about why are we here? God has given us this chance to be on earth. Let's give back. Let's do something special. And that's what we also realized when we started the Punjabi Chamber Foundation. And we said, look, we have so many wonderful people together. Why not use this to help raise money and other benefits for communities that we're involved with? And so we started this foundation from our membership, and we raised $35,000 in 2 weeks. And then we started, handing out PPEs and all the other good stuff, food, etc., through our local chapters, right? And so it's been a great experience seeing how the Punjabi community, when given a chance, really thrives. And naturally, it's in our DNA. We're Sevadars, we give back. Seva is in our DNA. Next, please. Yeah, I mean, these are just food drives that we did, right, for the community. These are lunches that we provided for some of the people, right? Once again, we don't just focus on just the Punjabi community. We focus on helping everywhere, right? And so, all of this stuff is only done, really with the support of our community, right? And next, please. Yeah, so what I'm going to leave you guys with today is really that we are here just for you. And I urge you to get involved. Our leadership team is always open for newer people. Anybody who wishes to help, you can contact us, go to our website. We'd love to have you. If you want to become a mentor to someone, please let us know and we'll hook you up. If you're looking for capital, if you're looking for anything else, let us know how we can help. So this is really what it's all about, right? And this is a chance for our community to rise. So we're asking you to come on this ship, right? We're going to have a lot of fun together. We're just getting started, right? And come join the Punjabi movement, at punjabichamber.com. And I think, Neeraj, that should be my last slide. There we go. Thank you, everyone. God bless you all.
All right. Thank you, Gary, for the great introduction to the Punjabi Chamber. I'm Kulwant Sandhu. I'm a co-chair of San Francisco chapter of PCC. I lived in Bay Area for past 31 years, and I've seen our community grow over the years, year over year. And I would like to give a shout out to all the Punjabis and all the PCC chambers around the world and everyone on this call. Punjabis are known as brave, lively, helpful and hospitable, fun-loving, resilient people. Most of the first generation Punjabis, I think Gary shared his story, had a unique but a very similar storyline. We all came with few dollars, and especially the first gen, and are successful business owners, entrepreneurs, and our next generation is doing great things going forward. So the purpose of Punjabi Chamber, as Gary highlighted, is to provide a platform to help mentor not only our first gen, but also our next generations, so we can contribute to the community and the society we live in. Today, I'm proud to welcome a perfect Silicon Valley success story of an accomplished Punjabi who has influenced a wide variety of markets globally. He has a knack to think decades ahead, detect great ideas in early stages as a VC partner. When I met him, the term Chardi Kala and Nimrta came to my mind. I felt his general curiosity, eternal optimism, and joy, besides being successful and accomplished and very well educated person. He's easy to talk to and very down to earth. He's an avid reader and a writer. I was able to read his top 10 book review, and then I looked more into it. He does that every year. He does it for year after year. So it's on my agenda to go review the previous year's top 10 reviews and then add it to my reading list. I'm truly honored to introduce Dr. Ajit Singh, who is among us to share his journey and his wisdom with us. Dr. Ajit Singh is a partner at Artiman Ventures, a Silicon Valley VC firm focused on early stage technology and life sciences. He also serves on the board of trustees of the American Association of Cancer Research Foundation and is an adjunct professor in School of Medicine at Stanford. He's on the board of directors of Visby Medical, Core Diagnostics, Cadila Pharmaceuticals, Summer Bio, and Sophie Biosciences, and is a senior advisor to Tata Trust Cancer Care Program. In the past, he has served as a CEO of Siemens Oncology and a CEO of Bioimagine, a cancer diagnostic startup that was acquired by Roche. Ajit has a PhD in computer science from Columbia University, a master's in computer engineering from Syracuse, and a bachelor's in electrical engineering from Banaras Hindu University. I would like to request all the participants, if you have questions, please write it in the chat, and I'll ask the question after Dr. Ajit's done with his presentation. And here, I'm honored to present Dr. Ajit Singh ji. Floor is yours. Neeraj, can you please?
Yep, I think I'm with you. That's fine.
Thanks.
So Kulwant, thank you for the introduction, and more importantly, congratulations on the launch of the chapter. Yourself, Gurpreet, Sandeep, Neeraj, Dilpreet, others. Um, I'm much more comfortable with conversations. So presenting to a screen I have not mastered the art in the last 1 year. I've tried, but that's not natural me, and I'm too old to learn a new trick now. So feel free to put stuff on chat. That'll be the closest analog of being able to walk the room and talk to people, and I'll do the best I can. So I picked this topic, venture, adventure, and social venture. It's actually, I've used this title before, 7 years ago. Different stage of my life. And when I look back, I thought what slides I should change. Actually, I couldn't change anything. So it means one of the two things, it means I haven't learned a whole lot in the last 7 years, which is not true. But I think it also says that some of the fundamentals are still the same, and they were put in place even much earlier. So let's walk through this. Let's Neeraj, next slide, please. So often when you meet entrepreneurs, there's this tendency to look for some pre-designed templates, some recipes, and I can honestly say there's no recipe. I don't have a recipe, and I don't think generally recipes exist. You have to really approach problems from first principles and look at every problem de novo. And by the time you've learned a trick, the environment changes, and then you have to learn a new trick. Next slide. Tons of stories. Next. Is it possible for me to get the control of the slides? And if not, that's okay. We'll go through it.
Yeah, Neeraj, can you maybe give control to Ajit?
No, he cannot get the control.
That's
If
okay.
you want,
Okay.
we can
That's
share.
quite okay. That's quite okay. Let's keep going. So I'll describe the journey. Next slide. Starting somewhere in the middle. Next slide. Keep going. I'll keep up with you. Go ahead. So stop here. Go back. So I think I'm going to learn this trick as I go. One slide. So there is a central idea that defined a big portion of my professional journey. And that idea was born about 20-ish years ago. So around 2000, 2001. I had been at Siemens for some years, and this was the time I was a first-time CEO. And over the next 1 year, it became very clear that to drive innovation, you needed cognitive diversity. So it's not a new concept. You always need ideas that come from different vantage points, different lenses. But for me, this insight became very, very clear about 20 years ago. So at that point, I could look back and be a revisionist. I could rewrite my past in this new concept. We all do that. And I did some of that. But much more importantly, it became an important sort of element of how I worked from that day onward, or that time onward. Next slide. So I built sort of a journey around it. Let's go back. Next slide. Rewinding the tape. Next slide. So my early childhood began here. This is my school in Kanpur. So I joined the school when I was in 5th grade. Before that, so I was born in Aligarh, lived in Jammu, lived in Kanpur. Kanpur was starting 5th grade onwards. And early childhood, look, when your parents are gone, my father is no more, you tend to idolize them, you tend to deify them. So I'm no exception. But he was quite an interesting guy. Many very, very interesting stories. This is something from 1980s, I think 1980 or 81. I had applied for a scholarship from two venues. I applied for a scholarship from the University Grants Commission, and I applied for a scholarship through the Railway Welfare Fund. My dad was in the railways. Now, Railway being a bureaucratic organization, they slept on the application, waited a while. About a year later, they came back, oh yeah, we're going to give you a scholarship. But by that time, I had already gotten the scholarship from the University Grants Commission. So this is a letter my dad wrote to somebody in the organization saying that, look, we had applied for a scholarship here and a scholarship there. My son has already got the scholarship, so it's best that I don't accept the second one. And so I have declined the payment and have so on and so forth. So now, this was days before social media and long before there were databases that were all synced up. There was absolutely no way anybody would have ever found out if I had availed 2 scholarships. And even if they did, I later figured out it was actually not even, it was nothing unlawful about 2 scholarships. But that mindset of, thoda sabr karke rakho, thoda tasalli rakho, that came very early in life. Now, can I think of incidents from early childhood? Quite a few. But looking back, I think it actually played a very significant role in how I went about running my businesses, how I went about coaching people, what kind of things I coached on. This played a very important role. Next slide. From school, that's my university days, Banaras Hindu University, beautiful campus. Go back for a second. Back one slide and one more. So this, just imagine, this is a semicircle on a radius of 3 miles. It has 104 colleges within the university. And you have complete freedom to do what you want. And this was true even 30 years ago. So I joined in 1980, so 40 years ago. So I could take courses in German. I took a course in palmistry. I took a course in Sanskrit. I took 4 classes in German, took a bunch of courses in economics, and there was absolutely nothing that stopped you. And the total fees for the entire semester was like 200 rupees. So, kind of eat what you can approach. And this was a pretty transformative period in my life. It got much better at Columbia, but this was also a pretty significant period. Next slide. I'll go back for a second. Did some pretty mean things growing up. So there was a kid in my class who was constantly drunk. And he used to pass out in the hallway. And so one day, 4 of us, we took this guy, we tied him to his manji, we took him to Ganga and we put him in a boat and sent him afloat. He was about 8 miles away from the college. So we've done some pretty crazy things, but though that's part of growing up. Next slide. That was my the Department of EE. Next slide. That and just click once, it'll give you a small animation. This was a hostel or a dormitory in Banaras. It was called Rajputana Hostel, and they had a small gurdwara there. So then I later uncovered that the Maharaj of Patiala had donated 5 lakh rupees to Madan Mohan Malviya, 500,000 rupees, and the intent was that there shall be a gurdwara, there'll be a scholarship, and the students and 6 students and professors will have the ability to have sort of their spiritual underpinnings somehow grounded there. Now, when you're living far away from home, suddenly you become religious. I was no exception. So I grew up in a relatively religious and spiritual home. Mom and dad were both very, very devout and Amritari and everything. But we all had all our human failings as well. So I'm not claiming any perfection there. But coming to Banaras sort of enhance that need to be connected to something. So regularly for about 5 years, every Sunday, with the exception of 1984 riots, we went to the Gurdwara. And that period of riot was pretty bad. I mean, the Gurdwara was vandalized and it was horrible. We had to run for our lives. I stayed hidden in a bunker at the Vice Chancellor's house for 5 days. My parents had no idea where I was. I had no idea where they were. It was a horrible period. But the rest of 5 years were pretty remarkable. In those days, I mean, if you know this pratha of apna charni pehna, you start reading the Granth Sahib. All those things sort of came to my life in those days, and this is the keep going, full-blown image of my department. Next slide. So what did I learn those 5 years? What's the one thing I learned? So if I can kick back and say, summarize in one sentence, I learned how to think from first principles. And probably the engineering learnings are, or the education and engineering is the kind that gives you systems thinking. I'm sure other fields do as well, but I have a feeling it does it a bit more systematically. And so thinking from first principles was truly the key learning I can take away, how to go about solving problems. And also some humility. So I don't think I had much of a social skill in my first year and second year. I was one of those kids who was ragged even in my second year. Just imagine. So now ragging, some of you know what that term means, and the others, it's hazing, what used to be in the 60s and 70s in the US. But I was so nikamma that even in second year I was ragged. I had absolutely no social skills. And somewhere along the way, I began to realize that it was hurting me. And it was one professor, Amitabh Bhattacharya, he asked, I was teaching something, I kind of raised my hand, I said, why? And he gave it off to me in the class. I was, what do you mean, why? Can't you just raise your hand? Can't you be polite? And it was remarkably embarrassing. I was like absolutely red in my face. But it was a turning point. I mean, it took somebody who I really respected to basically slap me around the classroom in front of 50 people. And in retrospect, it did really good. It did wonders. Next slide. Columbia. So I made a short stop in Syracuse. I can talk about it, but it's too short. All I remember about Syracuse is I wrote to my father after I finished school at Syracuse. I said, this year's summer was on a Thursday and Friday. The whole bloody year was snow-clad all year long. 2-3 days of sun is all you got. So that's my, but it was a good beginning in the country. Columbia, next slide. I met my advisor, next slide, Peter Allen. Pure serendipity. I was actually not even sure at some point if I'll go for a PhD. But idea was kind of formulating, and I read a paper that he had written, and I just cold call, wrote a letter to him, emails. So it was like a typewritten with a Remington typewriter. This is 1985. And next slide. Next slide. So my father passed away in 1986 in an accident. So I had been in the US less than a year at the time. So I went back to India for a couple of weeks, came back, and now suddenly there was quite a bit of responsibility. So my mom was 44. My younger brother was 17. We probably had some of my dad's, whatever, the provident fund or what have you. But fundamentally, we were lower middle class. So I started driving a taxi. I drove a cab in New York City for a year and again, I'm not saying this to, like, typical Indian story starts, जब मैं बहुत छोटा था, मैं बहुत गरीब था, मेरे पास, I'm not implying any of that, but it was a remarkable experience. I mean, I had a scholarship, but I needed some extra money. And it's amazing how people, Sikhs don't let Sikhs or Punjabis don't let Punjabis go. It's a somewhat correct statement. I had all Punjabi, Pakistani and Indian drivers rooting for me. So most cabbies hate going to JFK because you have to wait 4 hours to get a fare. They all like to stay in Manhattan or Bronx. I used to love going to JFK because I could study for 4 hours, then pick a cab and pick a fare and come back to Manhattan, don't do it again, study 4 more hours and come back. So 8 hours of studying, 2 rides of $60 each, and I was a rich man. And these cabbies, they realize, yeah, I have to study. So why am I sitting in my taxi, moving the car, one step at a time? They said, we'll keep moving your car. And when your turn comes, we'll whistle Punjabi CD, and then you come running. And this was before any pagers or cell phones and none of that. And this worked wonderfully. I was like sitting 100 feet away, and one of my ears was tuned to listening to the CD and come in. So it's amazing. I cannot thank them enough. They were unknown faces. I mean, I remember some names, but I don't have their addresses, phone numbers, anything. There was no cell phones, and obviously they probably moved on. But there were probably 30, 40 people who would move my car for the next 1 year while I studied. So yeah, the clan can go to that extreme as well. Next slide. What did I learn from those 3.5 years at Columbia? So started my PhD in 86. I finished in 89, just over. So merit matters, but serendipity matters a lot more. I mean, nobody was stupid at Columbia. They were all pretty smart people, right? But to have found the advisor who was very nurturing, when he found that my father had passed away, he went with me to the bank, withdrew $700, gave it to me. And it's not, I had my uncle in New York, I could have borrowed money, but he was thoughtful. He was very thoughtful. And those things are tremendous. I met also somebody else, very, very interesting. they'll come to, I'll come to that in a bit. And you'll see how strongly serendipity matters, and it's tied to my taxi driving. Next slide. So number of jobs and careers along the way. Started out as a faculty at Princeton alongside being at Siemens, and you can see the list. And what I learned from that experience, next. I learned, next slide. It's critical to have mentors. So BHU, I can say when I entered, I was a khota, and I left with a somewhat grown human who was polite, who became polite, who began to understand the value of social interaction. So learning number one, first principles. Learning number two, serendipity matters a lot. Don't be in this illusion that there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that makes you who you are. And I'm living evidence that how it turned out. Serendipity matters, and then mentors matter a lot. They are, so they have a very important definitional difference. There is coach, there is advisor, there's mentor. So advisor answers your question, coach asks you question, doesn't answer anything, but only asks you question. And mentor successively gives you more and more difficult tasks and watches that you don't fall. Just when you're about to fall, either he gives you more to go hang yourself, or he comes and helps you and then gives you more so you hang yourself. It is remarkable what a good mentor can do. So I had Peter Allen. I carried a lot of guilt about him. For example, I didn't put his name on any of my publications initially. And I spoke with him I spoke with him 2 years ago. My daughter Pavita reminded me that, no, Papa, you spoke with him before. And I expressed that to him. I called him again last 2 weekends ago. I said, I'm carrying a lot of guilt that I did not put your name on any publication. And look at his magnanimity. He goes, I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't remember. Okay. He's probably close to 70. And this is an interesting man, Oliver Sacks. He was a neuroscientist, neurologist. He passed a few years ago. And he was someone I picked up at JFK. And I, by chance, recognized his face because I had seen it on the back of a book. And I, at some point, asked him, are you Professor Sacks? And of course, he first teased me, how could an Indian taxi driver wearing a polyester shirt with a matching turban? Now, my turbans always match my shirt. That was one learning I had from PHU as well. And he joked around with me, but eventually decided to advise me. He became a very, very important person in my life for the next 3 years, 2019. And we remained in touch until he passed away. Next slide. This man on the extreme left is a guy called Eric Reinhardt, my first and only boss at Siemens, with 1 or 2 minor exceptions. 14 years working for one guy. And, if it sounds like I'm mesmerized by him, I am. If it sounds like I deify him, I do. If I sound like he's a magician, I do think so. So he was a music conductor, as in he, conducted orchestra in Carnegie Hall. He was a physics teacher. And he, in my view, led the most fascinating and most successful medtech business on the planet. And I had the luxury of learning from him, literally every day by watching. My typical meeting with him lasted about an hour, if it was during the day. And in that hour, the total amount of air time was about 20 minutes, 40 minutes of silence. So he would ask something, I'll be thoughtful, think, well, I'll answer that. He'll say something, and vice versa. And that was all it took. If I met him initially I met him about once a week, but then eventually once a quarter for about an hour or two. And that was all it took. Just watching him in action was fascinating. Next slide. This is an interesting guy, Mike Phelps. Mike was a boxer when he was a kid. He lost his father and his sister in a fire that engulfed his home. And his mother essentially went mentally ill and did a lot of harm to herself. And he was given up for adoption to a guy who was a boxing coach. And that boxing coach taught him how to box. This man represented the US in many international events, but eventually he had an accident, couldn't box anymore. And so at a very late age went to high school. In his 30s, he went to high school. In his 40s and 50s, MD, PhD, and then invented PET, positive on emission tomography, created a company. I was at Siemens at the time, so we invested in his company. I joined his board, and advisors and so on and so forth. But and he's now 80, I think 80-ish. Still goes to work, still teaches, and I learned a ton from this man. So again, he can beat any Punjabi in drinking whiskey. I mean, I invited him to give a talk. He had down 4 single malt or single barrel, whatever, and before he went to give a lecture. And I was sweating bullets. He's gonna go, but actually he didn't do any of that. Phenomenal. He served on 2 Nobel committees in chemistry and medicine, and he produced a remarkable first graduate, a guy called Sanjeev Gambhir. Sanjeev was my friend and mentor at Stanford. I don't have any picture of him with me, unfortunately. And Sanjeev was also served on 2 Nobel committees. He just passed away at a very young age of cancer. Next slide. On the left is Jaron Lanier, the father of virtual reality. On the right is Nathan Myhrvold, who was the chief technology officer of Microsoft, also a very celebrated chef. So I had some phenomenal people who taught me selflessly. The word is they really taught me selflessly. Probably their only redemption, their only gain from it, I mean, I didn't even put the guy's name on my paper here. Probably the only gain was the joy of teaching. Next slide. So key lessons, some summary of all these things. Next slide. There was a book I read in the 80s that was transformational. I've read it many times since then, Road Less Travel. It's the best management book I've read, although this is not a management book. It's a book that really teaches you about, or forces you to learn about, not teaches, forces you to learn about yourself and your situation and your environment. Next slide. So a few learnings, maybe there's a couple of detailed slides that I'll skip now. I thought I would be able to go through it. A very important skill is to engage in a dialogue. And a dialogue happens when you really listen with genuine curiosity to understand the other person's viewpoint. We often listen to respond. We don't listen to understand. We are waiting for the first half-second empty gap we will get, and we're ready to fire. We're loading our gun and ready to fire the moment we find an empty slot. You have to suspend your own thinking. And it's a remarkable lesson I learned from Reinhardt, from that quiet daily meeting, and you were quiet for 40 minutes. Because the listening had to be very thoughtful. You have to suspend your own agendas and listen. Extremely important lesson of leadership. How to build trust. So dialogue is a prerequisite for trust. Next slide. So you can see I'm an engineer. I've taken this great, deep, loving concept of love and trust, and I've reduced it to an equation. Reliability, credibility, vulnerability, self-interest, all these factors go into building trust. Trust is the outcome of a relationship. It's not a precondition for a relationship. You cannot expect somebody to trust you on day one. They can say, yes, I do trust you. But relationship has to prove that you can be trusted, or that you have earned the right to be trusted. Next slide. How to build teams. I mean, if you have dialogue and trust, you can build team. It's a very inefficient process. Go back. Dialogue and trust building is not fast. There's no shortcut in life. It's a very inefficient process, but it's a worthwhile investment to make, because what you get at the end after a few years is pretty damn remarkable. Next slide. Then, since there was a Chamber of Commerce angle to it, so I have to get to something much more practical, how to build a culture of high performance. Next slide. So high performance culture is not some, go back. There's a slide here, I think. Strange. Go forward for a sec. One more. See if I can find a missing slide. So high performance culture is not something you write on a PowerPoint slide, right? Anybody and their mother and dog would like to talk about a high performance culture. It's a nice, it sounds nice when you say it. So now, if I can make it boring, it requires the following 5 attributes. Very clear roles, very clear goals. Full transparency of all facts and all intentions. So transparency of facts is hard enough. Transparency of intention is impossible. But if you don't have it, you don't have a high performance culture. No chance. Full candor in a debate. So full debate before a decision, no debate after a decision. execute. And then accountability has to be unconditional, and over communication. Over communication is better than under communication. Extremely inefficient process, very slow process, but the reward is many orders of magnitude higher. Okay? So I could take this slide and spend a year explaining it. Yeah, so when Ray Dalio finished writing his book, Principles, I said, yeah, the book I wanted to write has already been written. Right? And if I could take that book and put it in one slide, it'll sound like this, although this slide was written probably in the 93 or 94. And then I added a couple of commas and dashes, or maybe I removed a comma. My editing czar or czarina daughter Pavita tells me always, I will never learn where to place a comma. Probably there's still a mistake on the slide. There is, I think, I don't know. My father used to find mistakes in my letters, and Pavita finds the same mistakes I made 40 years ago. So I used to come home for summer break. He used to have 10 of my letters, which I had written during the past 10 weeks. And with red pen, he would have marked the mistakes, right? And I'll tell you a story. So in normally the mistakes would be T is not crossed, I is not dotted, some wrong style, sentence ending with a preposition, which I still make that mistake, by the way. But in one letter, he called out only one mistake. So I had written sort of a vulnerable moment. My first memory of learning from you is when you taught me how to tie my shoelaces. I described the event and very poured my heart out. And my father finds a mistake there. So very interesting, he crossed out the word from. My first memory of learning from you, he crossed out from and wrote with. My first memory of learning with you, not from you. So I was 19, I think, 18 or 19, I think. So anyway, next slide. So the adventure here was, next slide. Plenty of changes, moving from Siemens to Siemens. Within Siemens, a couple of moves, fundamentally different moves, going from R&D into sales, going from sales into being a CEO, going from CEO to running a M&A activity, a lot of business in Brazil, and then leaving a large business behind, where I ran a large division of Siemens globally, to come run a startup from scratch. And brilliant timing, started on 6th of September with the promise of some money to be raised. And 17th of September, Lehman Brothers collapsed and Wall Street evaporated, and there was no money in the market. And so it was horrible. I mean, I truly began to doubt my sense of judgment. It was a period of low for me, not just I was struggling, but I had a lot of self-doubt. But when all ends well, you can write, oh, it was all a part of strategy. That's how I planned it. So, but it's not true. I did not implement a single line from my strategy other than the overall vision. Everything had to be changed. The amount of money we raised, the kind of business we built, the kind of customers we went for. We had to rewrite everything. And we'll speak to that in a second. And then I went to the investment side, but I never really became a great investor. I don't think so. I'm still an entrepreneur at heart. So I invest and then I go start helping run the companies. So time will tell whether they turn out to be well or not. So we invest in biotech, very long holding periods. So time will tell, but we have some very good companies in our portfolio, and they serendipitously became very relevant during COVID, even though they were founded 8 years ago. Next slide. So a lot of travel, obviously. So these two airlines, less said the better. When flight attendants start addressing you by first name and know your preferences on dinner, you have a problem. Next slide. And Kulwant made a brief reference to my love for books. Next slide. Some interesting people I met in life who also shaped my thinking quite a bit. This is Isabel Allende, so a writer of many books. Her uncle was the premier of Chile, Salvador Allende. And 9/11 happened in 1973 in Chile. And on September 11th, they had to leave. I met her by chance in Brazil and became good friends with her. She lives in the Bay Area now. Next slide. Some other people who shaped me quite a bit at work, Kulin Himani, top left. Kulin was laid off. My friend Kush at the bottom told me to hire him. I said, who is he? I have no idea. He goes, no, hire him. So I remember Kush typing a letter of appointment for Kulin. I had never met him. So that's how trust is built. I had known Kush for a year, and it's deep. I mean, two brothers of different mothers, deep trust. I said, fine. And this man became a critical element of my success. I attribute a lot of my professional success to Kulin and Kush. They were my COO and Chief Business Officer for nearly 15 years. Britta Fumstuk, this 6 feet tall Austrian, one of the funniest women I've met, with a great influence on me, introduced me to classical music, introduced me to the museum scene in Austria, and a lot more. Truly a Renaissance woman who was exposed me to a whole new side of culture I had no exposure to. Siegfried Bochonek, a German friend of mine, again, he was at CMU, I was at Columbia at the same time. We did our PhDs in exactly the same subjects. We became rivals within Siemens, two teams running the same thing, but we came together beautifully. And David Bodanis, at the bottom image on the left side, American writer, but lives in England, wrote a book called Einstein's Biggest Mistake, 10 Commandments. And he had offered to be a co-author on a book I was writing with Ajay Bakshi on the right side. Not yet done, but at some point we'll do that. Next slide. And so the one lesson from adventure, next slide. How to be secure. And I realized this somewhat when I was slapped around in my class by the teacher who said, why can't you be polite? I learned that I was not polite. It was a blind spot. It's easy to be polite at home. I had a father who was a disciplinarian. I could write to him, but I couldn't speak with him. I was in my late teens, we had a very frank relationship. He was way ahead of his time. So I've been growing up, 16-year-old kid, we go out for an outing at a zoo, and he openly talks about sex with me at age 16, 17. And that was not done in India. So we had, at some point, we had a very, very frank relationship, but it took a while to get there. The secure with who I am came from many, many experiences. When you realize how stupid you were in something, as it happened at Biomission time and many times at Siemens, many blind spots. So for example, Reinhardt told me, Ajit, you are perceived as arrogant. I said, wow, man, that's the one thing I don't think I am. And I had a great epiphany that for the people in my team, anybody who's sort of in my unit, 6,000, 7,000 people, I'm perceived as very, very polite. But with my peers, I was perceived as very arrogant. And it's not that I was calling them names or being passive aggressive. It's not my delivery, my tone, sort of that implying a chip on my shoulder with quoting a book or quoting, some great author or something. Just a way to establish intellectual superiority. So the aggression and arrogance doesn't have to come by, visible arrogance. It can also be very, very subtle. So if you use the word microaggressions when we talk about racism, similar stuff also happens in your arrogance. And when I look back, it was absolutely right. So those realizations began to come that, yeah, look, I'm not as cool as I think I am, or as cool as my children think I am, right? And those were important realizations that I had. Lots of things works in progress. Still, lots of things works in progress. Next slide. But we have to be secure. If you're not secure, then when you were earlier saying how do we inculcate this issue of being able to help our, if I could use the word clan, it requires a lot of shared language, it requires a lot of shared commitment to some beliefs like deep empathy. So then it can't be just a PowerPoint where, oh, deep empathy, mere paas bhi hai. No, deep empathy. You have to put yourself in the other person's shoe all the time, every time. One exception is one too many. One exception is one too many. I had a very strange incident yesterday. I feel very guilty about, extremely guilty about it. And it's yesterday. I lost my temper in a meeting. And without naming anyone, the conversation went, something was going on. And I said, look, that passive aggressive shit is not going to work with me. That's the word I use. And my tone was a little bit stern. And this man, obviously he felt very offended and he used a curse word, F you. And I lost it. I totally lost it. I asked him to leave the room. And later on say, my God, how could I do this in front of 5 of his peers? I asked him to, it must be so embarrassing for him. So works in progress. I'm still culpable for the same mistakes, many of the same mistakes I used to make 20, 30 years ago. Hopefully I make them less, but I constantly ask people, boss, please tell me where my blind spots are. So if there's a book by, Atul Gawande, something about coaching. The essay on coaching is really good. It was a New Yorker article, but then there's a book as well. Everyone needs a coach in life. You cannot be smart enough. If you don't need a coach, you're not smart enough. If you're really smart, you will need a coach in life. So get someone who's going to call out your BS, who's going to call a spade, give you a couple of slaps when needed, and help you understand your blind spots. Social ventures, obviously, and I'm 57, so there's always a desire to now give back. It's been there for some time, but I haven't done anything formal about it. But events like this obviously are helpful, and this journey has just begun. Next slide. Okay.
All right, thank you, Ajit. This was wonderful. We really, truly appreciate. I made like 5 pages of notes while you were speaking. Amazing stuff, right? Thank you for sharing your story, the learnings, and having good mentors is important. I think that could apply to this chapter or any chapter of PCC as well, that we can, how to be successful in life, trust. I think you touched on teams, which is great. And we need to build the trust and start executing. I think that's going to be a journey in front of us as a team as well. So we really appreciate the definitions and your sharing the stories with us. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Everybody enjoyed it. Now, I don't see any feed or any questions, but let's ask the audience if there's anybody has any questions, please raise the hand, or we can go to the next item after that. Okay, so I think you did a very good job of explaining everything. So I'll pass it on to Dilpreet. Dilpreet, if you can please help us, tell us what the next items are on the agenda, and then we'll wrap.
Sat Shri Akal ji, Saranu, I'm Dilpreet Virik. Thank you so much, Ajit ji, for sharing all your experience and your the person you are, how you become that person, and sharing all the details. And I feel like most of us can relate, like, living in a Punjabi household and moving to a different country and studying abroad and whatnot. So one thing, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today for the launch of our San Francisco chapter of Punjabi Chamber of Commerce. I'm going to be talking a little bit in Punjabi as well. If you're not a member yet, I think you should definitely join. If you're an individual who's looking to get motivated, or even if you're just trying to expand your network, it can be either like, you own your business, or you're in marketing, or you just want to know more people, right? Especially from Indian or Punjabi, to be specific, right? This group has helped me personally meet a lot of professionals in the industry, in the tech world, or any in investments. And look at, we have Ajit ji with us today. And I had my startup. I'm still working on my startup right now, but I didn't know what to do next. Since I'm from an entertainment background, I'm a singer and I'm an artist, but I'm not from the tech industry, right? So I didn't know what to do. And then Gary Paji messaged me, and then we got in connect, and then I joined PCC, Punjabi Chamber of Commerce, and I met a lot of professionals. So it can be you who's looking to get motivated, or it can be you who's looking to start, who wants to start your own business. This is the right group. So go to punjabichamber.com or find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram. Message any of the admins or the team if you want to join, and I think you should. There's no if. Yeah, please do message us and join us for everything. We're here for you. Thank you.
All right, Sandeep ji, you can do a wrap up of the call. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Dr. Ajit. And I really, we feel honored and grateful that you have shared your incredible journey an inspiring journey with all of us. And I think if I can say that many of us may find that if our Punjabi entrepreneurial skills were a little dusty, they can, with that inspiring journey, I think they can dust it off and start on their own and create a journey and make an impact and positive impact in this world. And I believe that's possible with our Punjabi spirit also, because we, like Gary said, that we are a giving kind of people. And if we, like Gary said one day to me and said, if you ask a Punjabi whether you need help, if you ask for something, a favor or something and ask for help, you will definitely you will never get a no to an answer. And to add to what Dilpreet said a few minutes back, and I think I will wrap it up by asking everyone to join. And the two, like Mudita and Gary said in the initial stages of our webinar today, that this group is for both professionals as well as businesses. Now, if you were to look at, I look at Punjabi community as somebody who has as diverse experience as we have, like from Ajit shared about the taxis, right? We talk about grocery stores, we have gas stations, we have technology leaderships, we have startups, we have incredible tech and financial CEOs and leaders, investment advisors. So all of them put together, I can say that we have tremendous expertise trapped inside us, which with this program and with this Chamber of Commerce, which Punjabi Chamber of Commerce, I think we will be able to bring that up and share across with the businesses, and they need help right now, and with other professionals who want to come to the business side, or maybe those businesses who want to grow, maybe or grow rapidly, or maybe grow 10x in the next few years, and they want help from and seek help from professionals. So this is a forum where I think we can help both professionals as well as businesses and build this together. And I think there is this experience, like I always say, that it's not only professionals who are helping businesses. The business, look at the person who came 60, 70 years back and have built a business, and that acumen and that experience which they got with sheer grit and hard work, we don't want to lose it, and we want to capture it for the next generation. And if we all join together, I think we will be able to get that, move on to the next generation and do a great job as a group. I wish everyone success, and I would like everyone to join us and contribute. And thank you, Ajit Singh, for sharing your journey.
Thank you. And I just noticed that actually Pavita is on this in the attendees. She just wrote "Hi Papa" somewhere, so you probably see all of that.
Yes, we did. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So Neeraj, we call it a wrap at this point? Yep. Okay. Very good. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.